The Iliad, Book 8. Dawn. Saffron light over all the earth. Zeus, who plays in thunder, had the gods assembled on the utmost peak of the rugged Olympic massif, and now enjoyed their undivided attention. Listen to me, divine ones, so I can tell you what I want. What I don't want is any god, male or female, attempting to brook my word. You are all to assent, so we can get this over with. If I catch any one of you with a private plan to assist either the Greeks or Trojans, he or she will return to Olympus a crippled wreck, unless, of course, I hurl him or her into moldy Tartarus, down into the deepest underground abyss, iron-gated and bronze-stooped, as far beneath Hades as the sky is above the earth. Then you will know who is supreme around here. Or would you like to find out now? Come on, hang a gold cable down from the sky. All you gods and goddesses holding the end couldn't drag down from sky to earth Zeus the master, no matter how hard you tried. But if I wanted to, I could haul up all of you with the earth itself and the very sea, then loop the cable around a spur of Olympus, and the totality would hang suspended in space. That's how superior I am to gods and men. They were stunned to silence, aghast at his words. It had been a masterful speech. Finally, gray-eyed Athena spoke up. Well, our father, who art the highest, we know very well your might is unyielding. Still, we have pity for the Danaan spearmen, who are now destined to die an ugly death. We will withdraw from the war if you command it, but we will still advise the Greeks, so they won't all be casualties of your wrath. And Zeus, smiling at her, answered, There, daughter. My heart really isn't in it. I want to be gentle to you, child. With that, he harnessed his horses, bronze-hoofed, gold-maned, and swift, and clothed himself in gold, and gripped his golden whip, and stepped onto his chariot, and with a touch of his lash they were off, flying between earth and the starry universe. He came to Ida, with its springs and wild beasts, a mountain mother, and to Gargaros there, where his precinct and smoking altar stood. There Zeus reined in his horses, unhitched them from the car, and shed upon them a heavy mist. Then he sat among the peaks, exulting in glory, with the city of Troy and the Greek ships in view. The Greeks were taking a hurried meal in their huts, and then armed themselves quickly. Likewise the Trojans throughout the city. A smaller army, but much more desperate to engage the enemy. They were fighting for their children and for their wives. All the gates were opened, and the troops poured through them, on foot and in war cars. When the two sides closed with each other, they slammed together shields and spears, rawhide ovals pressed close, bronze thoraxes grinding against each other, and the groans of men being slain and the cries of those slain hung in the air as the earth ran with blood. As long as the holy light climbed toward noon, soldiers on both sides were hit and fell. But when the sun straddled heaven's meridian, the Father stretched out his golden scales. On them he placed two dooms of agonizing death, one for the Trojans, one for the Greeks. He held the scales in the middle, and down sank the Greek day of doom, down to the fertile earth, where the Trojans soared up to the sky's expanse. Then Zeus thundered from Ida and sent a blazing flash into the Greek army. The soldiers gaped in wonder, and their blood turned milky with fear. Idomeneus lost his nerve and ran, followed by Agamemnon and both Ajaxes. Nestor was the only Greek commander left. Not that he wanted to stay, but Paris, Helen's fair-haired lord, had hit his trace horse with an arrow to the forelock, and the animal reared in pain, pawing the air frantically and throwing the other horses into confusion as it writhed against the bronze point in its brain. The old man was cutting the traces with his sword when the horses of an enemy chariot loomed ahead, Hector's horses, and yes, Hector himself at the reins. Nestor's death would have been assured had not Diomedes had all this in sharp focus. His soldiers' yell boomed across the plain to Odysseus. Son of Laertes, Odysseus, the clever Ithacan, watch out, you don't catch an arrow in your back, retreating like some gutless wonder. Come on, let's save the old man from this maniac. Odysseus didn't hear or pretended not to. He went right past, toward the Achaean ships. No matter, alone as he was, Diomedes shouldered his way over to Nestor's horses, and taking his stand, said to the old man, Here you are, old and broken down, with all these young bruisers at your throat. Your driver isn't much help either, is he? Here, get up into my chariot, and see what the horses of Tros can do. They know how to eat up the plain, and how to cut and turn in pursuit or in flight. I got them from Aeneas, a pair of real terrors. Our men can mind your horses. As for you and me, let's drive this team straight at the Trojans, so that Hector too can feel my spear's bite. That was enough for the old Gerenian horseman. Sthenelus and Eurymedon tended his mares, and Nestor got in with Diomedes, taking the silky reins and touching the horses with the lash. They closed ground quickly, and Diomedes threw as Hector came at them, missing his target but hitting Hector's driver, Enopoeus, square in the chest as he held the reins. He fell from the chariot, the horses swerved, and Enopoeus' soul crawled off in the dust. Hector took his death hard, but let him lie there, as he went off to find another charioteer, and soon found one. Archeptolemus, Iphitus's son. Hector had him mount behind the horses and put the reins in his hand. Things would have gone badly for the Trojans then, and they would have been penned in Ilion like lambs, had Father Zeus not had all this in sharp focus. He thundered terribly and threw a white lightning bolt that landed in front of Diomedes' horses and shot up in a flame of burning sulfur. The horses shied and backed into the car. The reins slipped out of Nestor's hands, and with fear in his heart he said to Diomedes, Son of Tydeus, turn your horses around. Zeus has given this man the glory today. Another day he may give it to us, but no one can change the purpose of Zeus. And Diomedes, good at the war cry, Yes, old sir, everything you say is right, but it cuts deep that Hector will some day crow, I made Tydeus' son turn tail and run. When he makes that boast to the men of Troy, I'd just as soon fall through a crack in the earth. And Nestor, the Gerenian horseman, What a thing for wise Tydeus' son to say! Hector may call you a coward and weakling, but the Trojans will not agree with him, nor will the Dardanians, nor will the widows of all those men you laid low in the dust. And he wheeled the horses around and fled, back through the tumult, with howling Trojans raining barbed missiles on them from behind, and Hector's taunting voice in their ears. Son of Tydeus, the Greeks used to honor you with the best seat, full cups, and red meat. No more. It turns out you're no better than a woman, a rag doll. Get out of here. Do you think I would just stand by and watch while you climbed our walls and carried our women off in your ships? I'll send you to hell first. Diomedes was tempted to wheel around and deal with Hector face to face. 3 times he wavered and was about to turn, and every time Zeus thundered from Ida, signaling that it was the Trojans' turn to win. Hector shouted to his troops, Trojans! Lycians, Dardanians, soldiers, remember to fight like the men you are. Zeus, I know, has decreed glory for me, and victory, and for the Danaans, defeat. Look at this puny wall they've put up. It will never withstand the force of our attack, and our horses will easily jump this ditch. Once I get to their ships, get me some fire, so I can burn the fleet and kill dazed Greeks in the smoke. Then he called to his horses, Xanthus, Podargus, Aethon, and Lampus, pay me back now for all the tender care Andromache, daughter of Aetion, showed you, setting out for you sweet mash with wine before serving a meal to me, her husband. Now pour on the speed, so we can capture the world-renowned shield of Nestor, solid gold from the rods to the core, and Diomedes' corslet, forged by Hephaestus. If we could take both of these, we could expect the Greeks to sail away this very night. Thus Hector's vaunts, And Hera shook with rage as she sat on her throne, making Olympus tremble. She turned to the great god Poseidon and said, Earth Shaker, you have all that power, but no pity in your heart for the Danaans dying, and yet they honor you with many lovely gifts at Helicea and Aegae, and up until now you wanted victory for them. If we had the will, all of us who favor the Greeks, to drive the Trojans back and hold Zeus in check, he would sit alone and frustrated up there on Ida. And the Earth Shaker's troubled, gloomy response. That's reckless talk, Hera. Far be it from me to endorse a fight between Cronian Zeus and all the rest of us. He is stronger by far. While they talked to each other this way, the space between the trenched wall and the ships was crammed with horses and men with shields, corralled there by Hector, son of Priam, and peer of swift Ares, Zeus's glory upon him. And he would have set fire to the upswept hulls had not Hera put it in Agamemnon's mind to make a last-ditch effort to rouse the Greeks. He went through the Achaean ships and huts, clutching his great purple cloak, and took his stand on the huge black hull of Odysseus's ship, from which a shout would reach either end of camp, to Telamonian Ajax's quarters at one end, and Achilles at the other, for these two heroes had drawn up their ships at the extremities, trusting their manhood and the strength of their hands. Agamemnon's voice reached every Greek ear. For shame, Argives! You're nothing but poor excuses for soldiers. What happened to all our boasts? All the big talk that we were the best? Remember Lemnos? All the beef and wine you ate there? Remember saying that each of you could take on 100 Trojans, 200? Well, now we can't even match one. This Hector, who is about to burn our ships. Father Zeus, has there ever been another mighty king whom you have blinded with blindness like this? Robbed him of glory as you have robbed me? And yet I never sailed past any altar of yours, I swear, on this misbegotten voyage here, without offering oxen at every single one, in my zeal to make rubble of the walls of Troy. At least, Zeus, grant me this prayer. Let my people escape. Don't let the Trojans annihilate the Achaeans like this. Zeus pitied his tears, and with a nod agreed that his people would not be destroyed. He sent an eagle, the surest omen on wings, holding in his talons a fawn, which he dropped beside the altar where the Achaeans sacrificed to oracular Zeus. When they saw that the bird had come from him, the Greeks smiled and counterattacked. Of all the Danaans, not one could claim to cross the trench and engage the enemy before Diomedes. The armored Trojan he killed was named Agelaus, Phraidmund's son. He was in the act of wheeling his horses around when Diomedes planted a spear in his back, with enough force to drive it out through his chest. He fell from his car with a clang of metal. Next, out were the two sons of Atreus, followed by both Ajaxes, clothed in fury. Then came Idomeneus and his companion Meriones, who weighed in like Ares, and Eurypylus, Eumaeon's fine son. Ninth was Teucer, stretching his bow as he took his stand behind Ajax's shield. Big Ajax would move his shield aside, and Teucer would spot his target and shoot. His victim would drop in his tracks, and Teucer would run back to Ajax like a child to its mother, and take cover again behind his shining shield. Teucer could do no wrong. In short order he killed Orsilochus, Ormenus, Ophelestes, Dator, Chromius, and godlike Lycophontes, Polyaemon's son, Amopaon, and Melanippus. When he had brought these down one after the other, his great bow devastating the Trojan ranks, Agamemnon took notice and came by to say, Teucer, my man, son of Telamon, keep shooting like this, and you will save the day for the Greeks, and be the light of Telamon's life, who raised and cherished you in his own house, though you were a bastard. Today you can bring glory to him, far away as he is, and I give you my solemn word of honor. If Zeus, Aegis holder, and Athena allow me to strip Troy down to its stone foundations, I will place in your hands special reward, second only to mine, a cauldron, or a chariot and a team, or a woman who will go to your bed. And Teucer, who was beyond reproach, most glorious son of Atreus, why urge me on when I'm at my top speed? I haven't let up since we started to push them back to the city. I just pick my spots and shoot Trojans dead. 8 long-tipped arrows I've let fly now, and all of them are stuck in some hero's flesh. There's only this one mad dog I can't hit." And he let another arrow jump from the string straight for Hector. He longed to hit him, but the arrow missed, finding instead the chest of Gorgythion, a son of Priam, by a woman from Aesime he had taken as wife, Castianeira, beautiful as a goddess. His head sagged to one side, like a poppy in a garden heavy with seeds and spring rain. Gorgythion's head weighted with his helmet. Teucer let another arrow jump from the string straight for Hector. He longed to hit him, but missed again. This time Apollo made the arrow swerve, and this time it hit Archeptolemus, Hector's charioteer, square in the chest as he hurled himself on. He fell from the chariot, the horses shied, and Archeptolemus's life drained away in the dust. Hector flushed with grief for his fallen driver, but let him lie there and ordered Cebriones, who was his own brother and close at hand, to take the reins. Cebriones did so, and Hector vaulted down from the chariot with a blood-curdling scream. Scooping up a stone in one hand, he made straight for Teucer, who had drawn an arrow from his quiver, notched it on the string, and was pulling it back. He was taking dead aim at Hector in his shining helmet when the stone caught him just where the collarbone divides the neck from the chest, a vulnerable spot. The jagged rock broke the string. His hand went numb. He staggered, fell to his knees, and dropped the bow. When Ajax saw his brother go down, he straddled him and sheltered him with his shield until 2 of his men, Mecistius and Alastor, bore him groaning heavily back to the ships. Then, once again, the Olympian lifted the Trojan spirits, and they pushed the Greeks straight toward their deep ditch, with Hector out front, thoroughly enjoying himself. A hound goes after a wild hog, or a lion nipping at its buttocks from behind, sure of its own speed but always watching for its prey to whirl around. Thus Hector pressed the long-haired Greeks, picking off the hindmost one by one. They were in full retreat until they passed the palisade and ditch. By then many had fallen. When they reached their ships, they halted and called out to each other and to every god they could think of, lifting their arms high, palms flat to heaven, while Hector wheeled his glossy horses right and left, staring toward the Greeks with eyes like a Gorgon's or like butchering Ares's. Watching all this, Hera was moved to pity and said to Athena in a flurry of words, "Don't the 2 of us care any more that the Greeks are being beaten? This may be the end. One single man, Priam's son Hector, is pushing them all to the brink of doom. His rampage is no longer bearable. Just look at how much harm he has done." And the gray-eyed goddess said to her, "I would love to have this man snuffed out, killed by the Argives in his own native land. But my father is on a rampage himself now, and constantly thwarts all my best efforts. He has conveniently forgotten how many times I rescued his son Heracles when he was struggling with Eurystheus' labors. He would cry to heaven, and Zeus would dispatch me to save his neck. Had I been sharp enough to know all this when he was sent to Hades to fetch the hellhound, he never would have made it back up from Styx. At any rate, Zeus hates me now, and has executed the plan Thetis sold him on when she kissed his knees and grabbed his beard, begging him to honor her son Achilles, sacker of cities. Well, one day he'll call me his gray-eyed girl again. But for now, you get our horses ready, while I go to the house of Zeus, Aegis holder, and put on my war gear. I want to see the expression on Hector's helmeted face when we 2 appear in the lanes of battle. Many a Trojan will glut the dogs and birds with their soft flesh after they fall by the ships." Hera, the white-armed goddess, agreed, and the Queen of Heaven, daughter of Cronus, hastened to harness the gold front-lidded horses. Athena, meanwhile, Zeus's favorite daughter, let her supple robe slip down to her father's floor, this embroidered garment her own handiwork. She put on one of cloudy Zeus's tunics, strapped on her battle gear, and then stepped into the blazing chariot cradling a spear long and thick enough for Heaven's daughter to level battalions of men in her wrath. Hera quickly flicked the horses with the lash, and the automatic gates of heaven groaned open as willed by the Hours, who control access to Olympus and heaven, opening and shutting the dense cloud banks. Through this gate they drove the patient horses. Zeus saw them from Ida and seethed with anger. He sent golden-winged Iris to bear this message. "Go, swift Iris, turn them back, and don't let them come face to face with me. It would not be pretty if we had to fight. This is my solemn word on the subject. I will maim their horses, throw them from the chariot, and smash it to bits. Not in 10 circling years will they be healed of the wounds the thunderbolt will inflict. The gray-eyed one must learn what it means to fight with her father. As for Hera, I am not so angry with her, since she always opposes whatever I say. He spoke, and Iris stormed from Ida's peaks to the Olympic range and caught them just at the gates and repeated Zeus's words. Where are you two off to in such a hurry? Zeus will not allow you to help the Greeks. This is his solemn word on the subject. He will maim your horses, throw you from the chariot, and smash it to bits. Not in 10 circling years will you be healed of the wounds the thunderbolt will inflict. That's so you, Gray Eyes, will see what it means to fight with your father. Hera, he's not so upset with you, since she always opposes whatever he says. But you are awesome indeed, and a fearless bitch, if you dare lift your spear against Zeus. Iris spoke and was gone in a blur of wind. Hera turned to Athena and said, Daughter of the Aegis holder, I can no longer countenance our fight with Zeus for the sake of mere mortals. Let one fall and another live, as chance may have it, and let Zeus judge by his own lights between Trojans and Greeks, as is only proper. With that she turned her hoofed horses around. The Hours unyoked them for the goddesses, and tethered them at their ambrosial stalls, and leaned the chariot on the shining gateway. They went inside and sat on the golden thrones with the other immortals, and nursed their grief. Zeus wheeled his chariot from Ida to Olympus, where the gods sat assembled. No one less than Poseidon unyoked his team, set the car on its stand, and draped it with a cloth, while Zeus rumbled onto his golden throne, and mighty Olympus trembled under his feet. Only Hera and Athena sat apart from Zeus, and failed to address him or ask him a question. He knew what was wrong, and said, Why are you two so upset, Athena and Hera? It's not battle fatigue. You two never get tired of pulverizing Trojans, your mortal enemies. It all comes down to this. These two hands are more powerful than all the gods on Olympus combined. As for you two, your shining limbs trembled before you got close enough to see the front lines. And it's just as well, because one thing is certain. Once you had been struck by my thunderbolt, you would never have made it back to Olympus. The two goddesses murmured to each other, huddling close and still scheming against Troy. Athena kept silent and said nothing out loud, although she was furious at her father Zeus. Hera, however, could not contain her anger. The awesome son of Cronus has spoken again. We're all too familiar with your irresistible strength, but we still feel pity for the Danaan spearmen who are now destined to die an ugly death. Fine! We will withdraw from the war if you command it, but we will still advise the Greeks, so they won't all be casualties of your wrath. And Zeus, clouds gathering around him. At dawn, you will see Cronus' almighty son, if you wish, my ox-eyed Lady Hera, making casualties of much of the Greek army. Hector will not be absent from the war until Achilles has risen up from beside his ship on the day when the fighting for Patroclus' dead body reaches its fever pitch by the ship's sterns. That is divinely decreed. Students, mark page 157. What Zeus just said is a prophecy, and you know it will be fulfilled. Page 157. Hector will not be absent from the war until Achilles has risen up from beside his ship on the day when the fighting for Patroclus' dead body reaches its fever pitch by the ship's sterns. This is divinely decreed. Your wrath is nothing to me, not even if you go to the deepest foundations of earth and sea where Cronus and Iapetus dwell out of the light of Hyperion the sun, cooled by no winds in the trench of Tartarus. Not even then will I care that you are angry, because there is nothing more shameless than you. He spoke, and wide-armed Hera said nothing. The sunlight fell into the ocean, drawing black night over earth's fields, a sunset the Trojans resented, but to the Greeks welcome, thrice prayed for, ebony night. Hector made camp, leading the Trojans along the river some distance from the ships to an open space that was clear of the dead. They stepped to the ground from their chariots to hear Hector speak. In his hand was a spear, 16 feet long, bronze point gleaming, the ferrule gold. Leaning on his spear, he addressed the troops. Hear me, Trojans, Dardanians, and allies. I had thought to destroy the Greeks and their ships and be back by now to windy Ilion, but darkness intervened. This, more than anything, has saved them, and their fleet parked on our beach. So for now, let us yield to black night and prepare our supper. Unyoke your horses and feed them. Bring cattle and sheep from the city, and get bread and mellow wine from your houses, and gather tons of firewood so that all night long until early dawn we can burn fires enough to light up the sky in case the long-haired Greeks have any idea of sailing off by night. We'll not let them board their ships at ease or without a fight. Let them each have a wound from an arrow or spear to brood over at home, a going-away present as they jump on their ships, and a lesson to others not to make war on Troy. Heralds should proclaim throughout the city that boys and gray beards bivouac tonight all around the city on our God-built walls. As for the women, each of them should light a fire in her house. The city needs to guard against a sneak attack while the army is away. Enough for now. This is sound strategy. In the morning I will address the troops again. I hope and pray to Zeus and all gods to drive off this visitation of foreign dogs. The fates have brought us in the black ships. For tonight we will take care of ourselves. At the crack of dawn we arm ourselves and hit the Greeks hard in their beachhead camp. I will find out whether the great Diomedes will drive me back from the ships to our wall, or whether I will walk off with his bloody gear. And tomorrow he will know what he is made of, and whether he can stand up to my spear. My hunch is that he will find himself lying wounded in the front lines with his friends all around him at sunup tomorrow. I wish I were as sure of immortality and eternal youth and honor like Apollo's and Pallas Athena's as I am that this is a black day for the Greeks. Thus Hector, and the Trojans cheered. They unyoked their sweating horses and tethered them with thongs to their chariots. They brought cattle and sheep from the city, got bread and mellow wine from their houses, and gathered firewood. They offered bulls by the hundred to the immortal gods, and on shore winds carried the smoky savor up to the sky. But the blessed ones disdained to partake. They abhorred holy Ilion and Priam, and the people under Priam's ash spear. But the Trojans had great notions that night, sitting on the bridge of war by their watchfires. Stars, crowds of them in the sky, sharp in the moon glow when the wind falls, and all the cliffs and hills and peaks stand out and the air shears down from heaven, and all the stars are visible, and the watching shepherd smiles. So the bonfires between the Greek ships and the banks of the Xanthus river burning on the plain before Ilion. And 50 men warmed their hands by the flames of each fire. And the horses champed white barley, standing by their chariots, waiting for dawn to take her seat on brocaded cushions.